Welcome to the podcast. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having me.
So I'm going to dive straight in. Are you able to explain a little bit about the BRCA1 gene and how you came to understand what it is?
Yes, of course I can. Yes. So we kind of knew something was up when we've had sort of female members of the family um, being affected with female cancers, the breast cancer and the ovarian cancer, that kind of thing. Um, and with that, um, they died very, very young. So they were all in their 40s and 50s. So I've lost aunties, grandma, mum, so you kind of know that there is something not quite right. Um, Genetics at the time weren't that sort of advanced at that point. So my mum died in 2006. Um, at which point they couldn't actually check my blood because they didn't have hers. They needed a living person with cancer to check for that gene, for that specific mutation. Um, However, it went onto my GP records that I had history. And then from there, um, I kind of didn't do anything about it. And nobody approached me for a very long time.
So your mum had breast cancer.
She had both.
Okay, so breast cancer and ovarian cancer.
That's right.
Okay,
Yeah.
so before then, had you heard of the BRCA1 gene?
No, I had no idea. I just thought breast cancer was breast cancer. Ovarian cancer was ovarian cancer. People fall ill with it. And it can have dire consequences. I didn't hear or I hadn't known about gene mutations or anything like that at that point.
So was it the consultant, your mum's consultant, or your GP that made you aware of, potentially there's a link in your DNA that's been passed on, maybe from your mom or your parents?
So actually, no. Nobody ever approached me. Although it was on my record that there was, proper history and proper, something going on. So in 2017, I kind of got a little bit older. I was about 43, something like that at the time. So I was approaching the age of, when I started to lose some of the family members. So you kind of start to think, don't you? Perhaps I should mention this again. So it was me who brought this up with the GP when I went to just a normal MOT, when they just check everything about you,
Yeah.
and just sort of pointed it out and sort of says, you are aware of these things. On my records, and the person who was in front of me just sort of nearly fell out of her chair when she realized what the history is. And from then on, the ball started rolling super fast. I was referred to the genetic center at Doncaster. Um, they tested me in November 17. February 18, I got my results, which meant I was BRCA1 positive. So I had a gene mutation. It was explained to me that everybody has BRCA genes, breast cancer genes. That's what it stands for. But it's when they mutate or chromosomes within it mutate that you get faulty genes. And they come in all sorts of different sort of forms and sizes depending on the chromosome that's faulty.
So you went to your GP for a wellness check, so it wasn't to do with cancer at this point in any way, shape, or form, and it was the GP that said because of your family history, there's a potential that you could have this gene mutation that would put you at a higher risk, and you were to get yourself screened. Is that right?
So not so much screened. It was the testing. So the genetic testing
Mm.
is literally a blood test that they do, whereas the screening would be, going for your mammogram or an MRI scan or that kind of thing. Um, So two very different things. And depending on your risk level, which they can get from your blood test, from your genetic test, they can find out what your overall sort of lifetime risk is for breast cancer and or ovarian cancer. And that then determines how you move forward.
Did you say we all have this mutation, or is it just some people have it?
Yeah, so I've got the BRCA1
Yeah.
mutation, which is one of the as it's of course it is. It's one of those more serious ones where the risk is automatically higher because of the mutation or the type of the mutation. So they basically told me I had an 89% lifetime risk of getting, breast cancer slash ovarian cancer. So, and that's taken into consideration not just the blood sample, but also your family history plays a big part to how they arrive at this lifetime percentage.
So when you received that news, how did you feel?
Oh, gosh, do you know, I kind of knew that something was cooking because obviously, there was something not quite right. But like any gene, you do have 50% chance, haven't you? So you've got 50% chance equally of not inheriting it. Um, so I guess half of me was still thinking, maybe I'll be just fine. So yeah, it kind of the bottom just drops out, doesn't it? And because I was limited to what kind of sort of next step to take because there wouldn't have been really medication at the time to work with that, which is something that I think is what people are looking at the moment. Researchers are looking at. Um, at the time, it was either monitoring or it was surgery.
So,
So
so it was your GP. So you had an appointment to get the results, and it was the GP that said to you, "You've got this BRCA1." Or
no, you deal with the genetics team
oh,
directly
so you
from
get
the
referred
moment
by
of
your
referral.
yeah,
Yeah, from the moment of referral, you don't really have any more to do with your
yeah.
GP. It's that side of things that takes over.
So when they tell you that news, what happens next?
Um, so with me, because of the high risk, surgery was what was recommended. So meaning, a double mastectomy,
Yeah.
and later on, it's like a hysterectomy, but it's just your ovaries, really. Um, So those two things needed to happen, and they needed to happen fairly sharpish. So I was immediately referred to a consultant, um, and they basically just talk you through your options, because there are different ways you can have a mastectomy and a reconstruction if you want it. So there are so many different options that they go through. So by May 2018, I was under the knife. So it was all very super quick.
So from a clinical perspective, it was a no-brainer. They said, talking to your consultant and the genetics team, they said, you'd be silly not to undergo the mastectomy and have the procedures. Is
Yeah,
that how it
so
happened?
they can't sort of guide you into any direction
Mm.
because it has to be your decision.
Yeah.
Um, but you are limited, or I was limited at the time to what my options were. And because I'd seen how much my mum, for example, struggled, and how terribly she suffered, and all of these kind of things, and how miserably she died. Um, for me, monitoring was not good enough.
Mm.
What if they missed something? What if, there were too many what ifs. So surgery for me was wiping those worries out.
So there's no pressure put on you. It's absolutely your decision. You can take your time in terms of weighing up all the different factors and variables. And for you, because of what you witnessed with your mom and what she went through, for you, it was the decision to have that mastectomy and to have the Do you say hysterectomy, or is
Yeah,
that the procedure for?
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So that's the preventative. That's what, if you have a higher chance of ovarian cancer, that's what they do to reduce your risk of getting the disease. Does that, when you have a mastectomy and when you have the hysterectomy, does that reduce it completely in terms of, does that mean you've got zero chance, or does it just significantly reduce the chances of you developing it?
Yeah, so I'm more at risk now of getting other types of cancer than I would be, from the gene, from the genetic mutation type cancer. So I will always, they can't eradicate the risks 100%, but
Yeah.
they're very, very low now.
In terms of getting tested positive for the BRCA1 gene mutation, does your age play a factor in it? So if you were tested and you were 20, would that mean you have the same chance of developing breast cancer as if you had the gene and you were 40 and 50? Because from what I know about developing cancer, it's still the main factor is age, I think, in terms of, generally older people tend to get the disease. So in terms of the BRCA1, as you get older, does, I know it's a high chance anyway of developing it, does it get even higher when you get to your 40s and 50s?
So that's the thing with gene mutations. If you've got that faulty gene, it's there and it's there all of the time. So in your life cycle, you kind of go through different phases where your hormones produce at different levels. So for instance, if you were like my daughter, she's 21 now, they wouldn't, she could ask for a test now because of the family history. But if she didn't have that and she'd ask for a test, they'd be telling her that she's too young at this point because she's not in that age bracket just yet. But having said that, they brought the testing age forward to 30. So there must be, there's a
Mm.
reason for that. I mean, for mammograms and normal testing, like you spoke about, for age-related breast cancer or, situational breast cancer, um, that doesn't start until you're well in your 50s,
Mm.
your regular mammograms. And then they're inviting women to come along and just get tested anyway, don't they? But
Mm.
with the BRCA gene, that starts much, 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 much earlier.
Oh, and going back to the family, so can you hear me okay, Nikki? Is that okay? So going back
Sort of
to,
like this, aren't I?
I'll be eating this mic in a bit. So just going back to your family history. So you said your mom had breast cancer. Were there any other, parents or grandparents or siblings that had, just how prevalent was the disease in your family? Because I think a lot of people may have had one case of cancer in their family. Would that mean they would be eligible to have the BRCA1 test, or do you have to have more presence of the disease to be eligible?
Yeah, so I think whenever you've had breast or ovarian or prostate cancer in men,
Mm.
or even breast cancer in men, in your family, even if it's just the one-off, it's maybe worth having a chat with the GP about it.
Mm.
What have you got to lose? Um, but in terms of, they do look for a trend. There has got to be a trend. So a trend could be that a person in their 70s or 60s falling ill with a type of cancer may not raise that many red flags than a person who gets cancer or breast, ovarian, prostate earlier on in life, in their 40s or even younger. That's then an absolute red flag because there's something else that's triggering that, other than age and hormone changes, etc.
I mean, it's interesting you
So
said,
I've
sorry.
had an auntie um, who died from it in her 50s. My mum died in her 50s.
Mm.
My grandma died in, well, mid 40s. But I never met her, so she died very young. Um, but I guess her survival rate was lower because there wasn't anything around back then to help her. Um, and I had an uncle with prostate cancer. So there is, and they were all from the same family line.
So the back of your mind growing up as you get to middle age, did that increasingly have were you concerned that you were getting to an age where a lot of your family members had developed different types of cancer? So you were thinking, I need to maybe keep an eye on this, and at some point need to discuss the options with the GP. And
Yeah, eventually it did. So, from 2006 when my mum died, it took me till 2017 because life happens, right? You've got your family, you've got a job, you do things, it's never the right time and blah, blah, blah. And to be fair, I didn't need to. There's nothing wrong with me.
yeah,
I was never an ill person, so I don't go to the GP. I can't do with the stress. Why would I do that? So it took me all this time to kind of just think, well, actually, I am approaching that age now. Maybe head in sand only works for so long, doesn't it?
mm,
So I kind of just mentioned it, not really considering the consequences from that. And then it just all blew up in a matter of months. And yeah, that was a bit scary.
yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. Can imagine it must be horrifying when you hear that you're at high risk. I mean, it's the bogeyman, isn't it? Everyone worries about cancer, no matter what age they are or background, and to be told that you're predisposed to having a significantly higher risk. It's the worst news, other than maybe getting the disease, that you can probably get. In terms of the BRCA gene identifying prostate cancer, I wasn't aware of that. I've only heard the BRCA1 gene mentioned in terms of breast cancer. So as a man, you'd probably think, well, it doesn't really matter to me. Obviously men can get breast cancer, but obviously it's more prevalent in females. So from a prostate cancer perspective, which is a very is a cancer which is very common, it's very important, I think, for men to know that they can also get the test.
Or at least look into it,
Yeah.
Is there anybody else in the family? Or it makes perfect sense if you think about it. It's a gene. Um, and once it's mutated, you've got again 50% chance of passing it on. And that doesn't matter if you give birth to a boy or a girl. You know what I mean? It's like
Mm,
it makes sense, doesn't it? That
yeah.
you are if you're going to inherit that gene,
Mm,
the gene doesn't care what gender you are at that
mm.
point. So it's like, yeah, so men are as much at risk as women.
I think it's important when it comes to surveillance to know that you may be at a higher risk, because like you said about your daughter, it means you can have informed discussions about what you want to do in terms of planning a family, or what you want to do in terms of your own healthcare and the choices you have available.
That's it, exactly that. I think, I mean, we've got very little uptake in the north of England to genetic testing. Um, and that could be because people might just simply prefer to not know. Um, I guess once you've had the test, you kind of have to deal with the consequences of whatever the test result is. So you've got to be prepared to deal with whatever comes your way. Um, so I think sometimes it's just easier not to know. Um, but the problem with that is these cancers are evil, and you really wouldn't want to fight it. Don't fight it. It's like if you can find out what risks you, then surely it is better to do something about it before it comes to that point.
Yeah. Do we have any information about how what the uptake is in terms of people taking the tests for the BRCA1 gene? Do we know if more people are taking it now, or is there any information about whether it's becoming more of a popular thing in terms of people are aware that they can get the test?
So I think nationwide, people do are getting more aware of it now. But there is a study that says that actually the majority of people only find out that they have a mutation when they're ill with cancer, because of course they have cancer. Um, it's a case of um, having to then test for everything. which is the whole issue, isn't it? And that's the first time they hear about it. So I'm a bit on a mission to get people to understand that actually ask your GP.
Mm.
If you're worried about it, they'll go through it with you. They'll just literally get a piece of paper out and they'll ask you, do you have anyone else in your family who may have had XYZ? And you can go from there.
I think the biggest problem is ignorance, isn't it? A lot of people don't know what options there are. You don't have to have cancer. You can do things now to, effectively combat it by being informed about your risk.
Exactly that. Exactly that. And research is coming along all the time. So from not being able to test my blood without my mum being alive and present, um, to oh yeah, we can do this just on your blood alone. I mean, testing or genetic testing like this had been around since sort of 96, 97, but they needed somebody else to test it against.
Mm. So when your mom when she developed cancer, did they offer her that test to see what your chance was, what other members of her family, what their risk was?
So actually, because she was abroad, it was a case of no, not really, because it was me who then went to family members. So I guess it was similar over there back. I mean, I'm saying back when, like it's been 100 years ago. But even in 2006, they didn't. They didn't sort of ask family members to get tested, and there were plenty of them in Germany. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Has that changed now? So when someone is diagnosed in a parent or a grandparent, do they then offer that testing to members of the family to see if they are at higher risk?
Yes, they're super efficient at that. So when I was given my diagnosis, um, they they asked um, they asked who else might be in the family, if there could be others, and we sort of worked together to get them informed. So I literally went onto the telephone and rang everybody I knew from that side of the family to make sure that they do get tested and and they find out. And actually, my uncle, who had the prostate cancer, um, only found out when he got tested that he has the BRCA gene and was therefore caught very early on.
Okay, so he didn't develop the cancer until after he was tested, so they knew. So potentially that may have saved his life, or at least, helped in terms of his treatment and catching it early enough.
I think so. Or as a family, we truly believe that that was the case. Yeah.
And from talking to other people that have gone through, so outside your family, other families, are they also taking up this opportunity to, so when someone does develop cancer within their family, to have the test themselves? Is it something that is becoming more popular as word spreads that you can have it? 'Cause again, I didn't know that was an option.
Yeah. So again, there isn't enough out there. To be honest, Tony, there isn't enough out there. This is why charities are really campaigning for this to be a thing. So, for example, Yorkshire Cancer Research is currently working on a project um, that that they call White Rose Project, and that is exactly about that. It's about, let's try and get testing earlier, wherever people might be eligible, get them tested. It saves oodles of money for the NHS.
Yeah.
Um, it prevents people from having to go through all that pain and worry and maybe not even making it. Why do we risk people's lives, by not offering this?
And this is a simple blood test. That's the whole test. You take a vial of blood, and then it goes off for analysis, and then you obviously get the results.
Yeah, it's as easy as that. It's as easy as that. And this is also available private if you can't get it on the NHS. So I've had a look into that. You can private practices
You looked into that.
do offer it.
Okay.
See, you got me thinking on that, didn't you?
Yeah, for people who probably don't know what we're talking about, I had a conversation with Nikki about whether you can get this test done privately. And so yeah, you found out that if your GP, for whatever reason or where you are, your situation means you can't access the test on the NHS, you can pay for that test privately.
Yes, you can. I mean, it's not cheap, but at least it is available. So
Mm,
depending on the risk that you feel you've got, um, I think it'd be worth it, just for the, peace of mind, really.
yeah.
Um, so but you see, if you have family history, there's no reason why your GP wouldn't refer
Mm,
you.
yeah. That's a
It's
good
just
point.
sometimes there might be a waiting time,
Mm,
again, depending on where you are in the UK. It's a little bit of a postcode lottery still, isn't it?
yeah. In terms of BRCA1, so you're saying that that's a marker for breast cancer, ovarian cancer, and prostate cancer. There are lots of different other types of cancers. Do the other cancers, so lung cancer, for example, does that also have an equivalent BRCA1 gene mutation marker that you can test for?
So I'm not a medic, Tony. So
Yeah,
all I know about the mutations that I'm aware of are all breast cancer
yeah,
cells related.
yeah.
So all the BRCA ones, although there is billions of mutations out
Mm,
there, and they are finding ways of trying to name as many of them as possible by looking at the different chromosomes that can be damaged, and that kind of stuff, to then offer suggestions, or at least if you know what it is, there might be something that people can do about it, or they might be able to look at the risk factor in a different way, etc. In terms of other types of cancers, I'm actually not sure. I would think with any genetics, that there would be a link and there's a mutation somewhere, and therefore it should be testable. But I'm
mm.
not entirely sure on that.
Nikki, thank you for talking to me on the podcast. I think genetics is certainly an area of breast cancer, well, any sort of cancer awareness that is kind of, we're on the verge of a new way of thinking how we treat and how we identify people who are at risk. And it's good that the NHS does support, genetic profiling, so you can find the information and make your decisions as to what you want to do with your body. And I think it's invaluable, really. If you are diagnosed with with cancer, at least then you have the silver lining that you may be able to help your family by, through your blood test, seeing if they're at a higher risk, and hopefully they can then take the necessary steps they need to mitigate developing the disease.
Yeah, I'm really keen on getting the message out there for people to just ask that question.
And just quickly, because we are running out of time, are you running some sort of business that helps people through mental health wellness, or can you explain a little bit about that? I think I'm rattling on. Could you explain about it, please?
So I do have a couple of things sort of under my hat, as it were. I do have a CIC, which is a community interest company, which I'm using to really go out there and spread the word, to offer local sort of support sessions, but to also raise awareness, as far and as wide as I can. And I've got a private coaching business as well, to coach any women, from finding out about their BRCA gene right through to finding some clarity around that.
Brilliant. I think it's great that you're raising awareness of the BRCA1 gene. I think it's something everyone needs to pay attention to. And
Thank you. Yes, it is. Thank you very much for having me.
you're welcome. Take care, Nikki. Thank you ever so much for being on the
Thank you.
podcast. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.